Hi everyone, and welcome to my presentation about Greek mythology. This is a subject that's interested me since I was in secondary school myself. When I started in year 7, I studied Latin, and when I was in year 9, I took up ancient Greek. I studied both for GCSE, and I even carried on with Latin for A-level. This combination of subjects, including ancient history, is known as classics. And my brother even went on to study it at university. Although I switched to modern languages for my university study, I still have a real love of ancient languages and culture. Now, you're probably already familiar with several Greek myths, although you might know them by their Roman names. So for this presentation, I'll show you both the Greek and the Roman names, since the myths from Greek legend and fable were duplicated for the Roman world. Now, the Greeks were the great myth makers of Europe, and they even gave us the name by which we refer today to these amazing stories about gods and heroes and men and animals. In around 400 BC, the Athenian philosopher Plato coined the phrase Mythology in order to distinguish between these imaginative accounts of gods and factual descriptions of events. The word mythos means story, and the word logos means speech. So even though Plato lived in a time that was becoming increasingly scientific in its outlook, for the natural phenomena that they couldn't explain, this is where the Greek gods could provide an explanation. Greeks couldn't explain why the sun moved across the sky throughout the day. So they invented a god, Apollo, who would place the sun in a chariot and drag it across the sky. At night, his sister Artemis, or in Roman Diana, would place the moon in her chariot and do the same. This is how ancient Greeks accounted for things that they couldn't explain scientifically. In this presentation, I'm going to tell you about some of my favourite characters and my favourite myth. The three most powerful gods in ancient Greece were brothers. When their father, Kronos, died, they split the command of the earth into 3 parts and became rulers of each part. Zeus became master of the heavens, otherwise known as Olympus, and earth. Poseidon became commander of the sea, and Hades, the underworld. Zeus is often the cause of most trouble or discontent for the humans in the stories, but was the most feared of all the gods. He's often pictured in paintings with his lightning bolt, which he would use to smite those who would try to oppose him. His brother Poseidon is often represented with a trident and a net, both popular weapon choices for gladiators when fighting in an arena. And the last brother is Hades, often depicted in myths as being jealous of the other two and dissatisfied with his own lot. In artwork, he's shown holding a set of scales, as he would conduct trials in his court in the underworld to decide if a person would go to the fields of punishment, the fields of asphodel, where nothing remarkable happened ever, or the fields of Elysium, which was akin to paradise. Let's not forget about the goddesses. Hera was the wife of Zeus and Queen of Olympus. She's described as a very jealous and petty character in the myths, but not without good reason. Often her husband Zeus would lie about where he was and what he was doing. This caused Hera to seek vengeance on anyone who threatened her marriage to the king of Olympus. Athena was the goddess of warfare and wisdom. She's usually shown wearing a helmet and carrying a spear. She has an owl, and she's an expert in strategy and in warfare. In modern times, she's become a symbol for democracy and freedom. Finally, Aphrodite. She is the goddess of love and beauty. Her most famous image is found in a painting by Botticelli and shows her rising from a shell. One of my favourite characters one of my favourite heroes, is Perseus. You can see him in the film Clash of the Titans. Perseus was a demigod and a son of Zeus. He was sent on a quest to find and kill Medusa, a hideous monster with snakes for hair who could turn a man to stone just by looking at him. Perseus needed to use the head of Medusa to save the princess Andromeda from being eaten by the Kraken as a sacrifice. He then married Andromeda and became king of Argos. At the end of this video, there's a trailer for the film Clash of the Titans. Achilles is another favourite hero of mine. He was also a demigod who had great powers, and he was a noble warrior in the Trojan War. In order to protect him from harm, when he was a baby, his mother dipped him into the river Styx, holding him by his ankle. The effect was to make him invulnerable to injury, except that by holding his heel, this part of his body did not go into the water and was therefore not protected. As a result, we use the expression an Achilles heel to mean a weakness, especially in someone or something which has an otherwise strong constitution. The Hydra was a serpent-like water monster with multiple heads. Heracles tried to cut off the heads to defeat it, but its magical powers meant that each time a head was chopped off, another two would grow in its place. Cerberus, or the Hound of Hades, was a three-headed dog that guarded the gates of the underworld. His job was to prevent the dead from leaving. Heracles also defeated Cerberus as part of his 12 labours, a series of challenges which he had to complete to atone for his sins. You might recognise the character of Cerberus from Harry Potter. J.K. Rowling borrowed this character to protect the Philosopher's Stone. In the ancient world, a man's life was thought to be determined by fate or destiny. Even the gods themselves were to a large extent subject to fate, although it was Zeus who saw to it that fate took its proper course. In order to know their future, people often consulted oracles for personal or political purposes. The Fates, or the Moirae, spun out a child's destiny at birth, which was symbolised by a thread. It was drawn, measured, and cut off. They can be portrayed as mean, denying humans their dreams, desires, or wishes. Cassandra was a seer who was doomed to be ignored. She was a key character in the Trojan War story and was the daughter of King Priam. She was endowed with prophecy by Apollo in exchange for the promise of her love. When she broke her word, he punished her by decreeing that her prophecies, however true, would always be ignored. As a result, she tried to warn the Trojans that the Greeks were hiding inside the horse, but they didn't believe her. This is my favourite myth. It comes from a book called Metamorphoses, and it was written by a Roman poet known as Ovid. And my favourite myth is about Echo and Narcissus. So I'm going to read you a short version of the story. Echo was a wood nymph. The ancient Greeks believed that nymphs were female magical creatures who lived in the mountains, the rivers, the streams, the lakes, and the forest. Nymphs were not immortal, they could die. If they married a god, however, their children were immortal. Nymphs were believed to look like beautiful young women and were the kindest souls. Echo was perhaps the most gentle, the most kind, and possessed a good and loving heart. She was very musical and had a beautiful voice. Echo lived deep in the woods, and every suitor that came to see her she rejected, which of course made her a favourite of the goddess Artemis. One day, Zeus tore into the woods looking for a place to hide. His wife Hera was after him again. Would he never learn to stop flirting with the nymphs who lived deep in the woods? Apparently not. Spotting Echo, he asked her to help him escape the eagle eye of his wife. One did not turn down a request from Zeus, not to live to tell about it. When Hera tore into the woods after Zeus, Echo sidetracked her with chatter and gossip. After that day, each time Zeus raced into the forest with Hera close on his heels, Echo sidetracked her with chatter and gossip. For some time, this worked well for Zeus. When Hera finally figured out what was going on, she punished Echo by denying her much of her beautiful voice. All Echo could do forever was to repeat the last few sounds she heard. One day, Echo spotted the most beautiful young man in the forest. His name was Narcissus. Echo did something she thought she would never do. She fell in love. But Hera had taken most of her voice. All she could do was to echo sounds made by others. She could howl like a wolf, but only if a wolf had just howled. She could sing like a breeze through the reeds, but only if the reeds sang first. How could she tell Narcissus that she loved him? One day, she spotted Narcissus looking into a stream. He seemed enchanted by what he saw. He did not know it was only the reflection of himself. "Come to me," Narcissus begged, looking into the water. "Come to me," Echo repeated eagerly. Narcissus swung about. "Who's there?" he angrily demanded to know. "Who's there?" Echo repeated. "Stop that!" Narcissus snapped. "Stop that!" Echo repeated. "Let us meet," Narcissus said, in a much softer voice than he had used so far. "Let us meet!" Echo echoed happily. She stepped out from behind a tree. "Go away!" Narcissus shouted at her. "Go away!" Echo repeated, and then Echo hid herself away. Narcissus returned to the stream again and again. He stared at the beautiful man he saw in the water, a young man who was the reflection of himself. Hidden from sight, Echo watched Narcissus as he lay by the stream. She repeated everything that Narcissus said, but Narcissus ignored her. Day after day he lay by the stream admiring his own reflection. He stopped eating. He stopped drinking. The legend says that when he died, he turned into a flower. When he died, Echo retreated into the mountains in her sadness. And that is why, if you call out, "Hello," in the mountains, you will hear Echo shouting back at you. My daughter Jessica loves Greek myths too. She's a huge fan of the series written by Rick Riordan, which feature main character Percy Jackson. You may have even read some yourself. Rick Riordan wrote these stories for his son after telling him bedtime stories. So Jessica, why do you like these books?
Hi, I'm Jessica and I'm going to talk about the Rick Riordan books. I love these books because they tell familiar stories but with a modern outlook and modern settings. The characters are diverse and relatable, and even though you might think you know the story, there is always a twist. Because it is a series, it's easy to get into each book as you already know the characters. There is a lot of action that keeps you on your toes, and I would start at the beginning with Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief.
If you'd rather watch a film which has most of these stories in, for example, here is Perseus holding the head of Medusa, you could watch The Clash of the Titans. It was made in 2010, and here is the trailer.
I've watched from the underworld. It is time for the mortals to pay.
The gods need us. They need our worship. What do we need of the gods?
Now! I created them, and they rewarded my love with defiance. There will be no truce. This is the end.
This is just the start.
Perseus, I've been watching over you for a long time now. I've always been there.
Have I heard his prayers? The sun knows no love for me.
This isn't your fight.
Someone has to take a stand. If I do this, I do it as a man.
But you are not just a man.
Release the Kraken!
I hope you've enjoyed listening to my talking about one of my favourite things. I love Greek myths. Let's see what you can remember about Greek mythology. Bye.